biological wife as well.
What does submission mean to you?
Trusting him, and just like if he tells me to go left, I go left. If he
What if you think you should go right? So here's the thing. So you and I can agree on one underlying point. If your man wants you to become a Satanist, obviously you're going to say no because you're going to defer to your faith.
Yeah.
Because that is within reason.
Right.
However, you can have tons of disagreements
Yes.
within reason. And you can have a deferring opinion to his. Do you defer to him?
Yeah, I think the foundation is that he has to be submitted to God. Then I could be submitted to him, and then everything else besides that, like if I don't agree with him 100%, I still have to trust him.
What if he's spending all that money the ways that you hate, and he's raising those kids all the ways that you hate? You're so angry about it. Do you submit?
Yeah, I would talk to him about it. I think that it would still.
But he dismisses it. He says no.
Then
I'm in charge of this family, and I'm correct, and that's that.
If he's
Do you defer?
the only way I would defer if he's abusing or cheating, like abusing my kids or abusing me or
Yeah,
cheating
he's
on
not
me.
abusing them. He just has a different worldview for where he wants
Then
them
no,
to be.
I would submit.
You would submit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though my flesh would
even
be like,
even in
"Oh."
cases of faith, as long as he's not leading you towards the devil,
Right.
right? It has to be within the confines of reason.
If he's
But remember
truly
that
submitted
most
to God.
arguments, hang on, most arguments happen within the confines of reason.
Mm-hmm.
He may have reasons you don't like, but that doesn't make him unreasonable.
Right.
You still submit, right?
Yes. If
Yes.
he is submitted to God, then I will submit to him.
So-
even if I
All
don't
right.
understand why he's telling me to do something.
So how is that not fake freedom that you mentioned earlier?
Because then it's not fake freedom because I don't have to worry about a lot of things that he's carrying that. Have you ever heard or you probably haven't.
That's
but
insane. Wait. Are you saying that your future children aren't going to be free?
Wait,
My
what?
children?
Yeah, to the Russian gal.
Me? I'm not.
Your
I'm,
children.
I'm never
you're going to
gonna
put
have
in-
kids, so it
Yeah,
doesn't
but
matter.
if you did, we're going to assume for a second that you
Okay.
had a child.
Okay.
Are you going to protect the plugs? They don't stick their finger in it.
Probably not because
No?
that-
You're
not
gonna
the
kill
plugs,
them.
not the plugs because I've put my fingers in the plugs when I was a kid and I'm fine.
What if they sucked their finger and then they did it?
And they do that.
I would teach my kids better than that
My
because
son
I
does
was
You're
taught
gonna
better than
You're going to
that.
teach your
My
kid
son
who
did
just
that with
started
an extension
walking
cord. It zapped him and he never did it
not
again.
to stick their finger in a light socket? Really?
Okay, all I'm saying is that I mean it's very different, but also I'm not understanding the point of your question.
Would you
can
let
I-
your kid put their
considering to the
hand in a
freedoms.
fire? Would you let your 2-year-old put their hand in a fire?
Yes, I would because that would teach them a lesson because that's what was done to me.
Okay, so I'm going to answer your question though. You said, is that fake freedom?
No, it's because you
It
mentioned
gets
fake
burnt.
freedom
No,
earlier.
I know what-
So
Would
it's
you
like
let your
I'm just
kid hang on?
asking
Would
how
you
is
let your
that
kid take a
different?
knife? Hang on. Would you let your kid take a knife and start stabbing themselves in the chest because that would teach them a lesson?
No, I would grab the knife and then I would grab
Yes.
a pillow and then I would stab the pillow to show what happens
Right.
when you actually stab.
But that kid doesn't sound free. That doesn't
So
sound
that-
free.
yeah.
That sounds like that sounds like you're dominating them and not letting them do what they want.
But how is okay? I'm sorry. How is that different from? Okay, I'm not understanding exactly the point between a
Well, I just
grown
explained the point. The
grown
point
woman
is- the point is
submitting
who's in
fully.
charge, you or the kid?
No, okay, I'm not understanding the point and the difference between a grown woman who already has gone through life and already has been taught all these lessons, submitting fully to a man, even with against her own body. How is that not a fake freedom? Because
Well,
you yourself said
great. It's
that.
a great
Can
question.
I answer?
Yeah, which
Hang
I
on,
would
I'll
like.
answer the question. Let us assume for a moment that you're 20 years old when you have your first child. You would agree that your experience is far surpassing that of the child, correct? Mm-hmm. And so it was a duty for you to guide the child, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So let us assume for a second you're 40 and marry a 20-year-old. Does the same duty exist?
No, it does not,
Oh,
and it should
doesn't.
not.
Why not?
Because at that point, it's a grown person.
Oh,
So
I see. So the lack of experience or the lack of emotional maturity or the lack of anything that one partner may lack, you have no obligation to follow the other one for guidance.
what?
If you are correcting a child, it's because you think that the child is out of bounds, right?
No, it's because the child doesn't know any better just yet, and they're still
Yes, but
learning
adults can
about
also
the
be in the same
world.
situation where they don't know any better,
Okay,
right?
except the specific situation I'm asking about is the one that you brought up, where she is shaking with anger and doesn't necessarily want to do it, but there are only specific situations
I
that
see.
will push her over the edge. And
What are those
how is-
situations?
which were the
Abuse
cheating and
cheating.
abuse.
And those are biblical.
Yeah, so abuse
So-
or infidelity.
Yeah, so
So what's wrong with it? So what's wrong with that? Let's assume for a second
I'm not
that she
saying
married
anything's
somebody
wrong with that.
she married somebody either equal in age to her or 20 years older.
yeah, and it doesn't matter.
If she makes the agreement that he says, "Listen, I want a submissive wife," and she submits,
Yeah.
what is actually the problem with him saying, "Good, then we're going to do things my way"?
There is no problem as long as everyone's consenting, which
Yes.
is why I asked her.
And
the
there's a second part
question.
to the
You
equation.
guys have like 1 or 2 minutes because the TTSs that have been
Yeah.
There's a
No
second
queuing
part
up.
to the
They're gonna
equation.
fall off.
Which is what I was
Okay, okay.
asking for. All I
So
wanted was
if you guys can
clarification.
each make your final arguments on this, please go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay, so the second part of the equation is that I'm not just submitting to him, but he's also laying his life down for me. So he's protecting me, he's loving me, he's looking out for me.
Okay.
So if I really believe that he is submissive to God and I trust him, then I can be. It is freedom because I don't have to worry about all these things that I don't want to worry about as a
Yeah.
woman. I don't want. I
She's
don't
talking
think.
about she's talking about that pesky epistemology. So from her purview, she submits to God, and so she thinks that her partner, in this case a man who submits to God, is in the image of Christ. So she's going to submit
Yeah.
to the partner, and she's going to submit to God, but she's also going to say, "Look, my partner is an image bearer, direct image bearer of the relationship between the head of the church and the body of the church." And so she's going to submit.
and which
And
is
here's
perfectly
the interesting
fine.
thing.
All I
Hang
wanted
on.
was
Here's the
clarification.
interesting thing about what she's saying, though. She's telling you that this is the case, right? That this is a truth claim. What's interesting about the truth claim is that the women and men who engage in this tend to have the best outcomes. How do you explain that?
Okay, well, actually, we haven't had the chance to talk about my relationship, so you don't know anything about me. And,
Don't need to.
And, well, but that's the thing. It would answer a lot, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying.
It
lot
would
what you're
answer a
saying,
lot. You
of-
said
yeah.
that you met with a disabled man while you were disabled and got really close to him over the disability, but have open relationships. Is that correct?
We do not have open relationships. We are monogamous. However, if we meet somebody, it would be a conversation. It would not be immediately
Yeah.
cheating
Do you
or
think
this
that
or
inside of a Christian marriage there would be any such conversation?
Well,
ever?
I'm not Christian, so which is why I'm asking
Yeah,
for
so
her
then I don't
opinion,
actually
and
need to
I-
understand your epistemology to explain my own. So if your
And I
epistemology,
wasn't
your
asking for
grounding
yours, I was
foundation
asking for
of
hers.
knowledge. Hang on, your grounding foundation of knowledge is "do as thou wilt," which is what it is. Then I can give you the epistemology of the Pentecostal here, who is telling you that is not my grounding knowledge. My knowledge comes from God and the submission to God, and therefore the submission of my husband. So if we're talking about these two worldview paradigms, she has the superior one because she's saying that she will submit, understanding there's a higher authority, which is her husband, and the husband's higher authority, which is God. You're saying you will not submit.
I never
A
said that.
conversation
I never
can
said
occur.
that.
Final.
If a conversation can even occur, how could you be submitted?
Again, you don't know my relationship, and if we had more time, I would have
Doesn't matter. I know
loved to
logic.
go into it.
How could you be submitted if you could go to your husband and say you want to fuck another dude, how could you really be submitted?
Because I don't. That's the thing. I
Yeah,
have
but,
not
but
wanted.
You can.
Because we are all free people, and if we see somebody that we like, it's all about what we
Right.
do with it.
Your pleasure. Do as I will, as I
Right.
want.
Do as thou wilt.
Yeah, I think everyone should do whatever they want.
Did you know that's the
You-
Satanist church's like affirmation?
I used to be a Satanist. You do whatever you want.
I mean, I'm just saying, that's
I'm
fine,
not
but-
judging
Oh, it's
you.
not- it's
I'm
not the
judging
LaVeyan-
anybody. I
it's
want
not
to
the
understand
LaVeyan
your
Satanist
perspective, which is why I
affirmation.
asked. And I was not asking for your perspective on her perspective. I was asking her
Yeah,
directly.
but listen, that's
Wait, you
not
can probably do the other
that's
split.
not the
Just see
LaVeyan
the other split.
Satanist affirmation of "do as thou wilt." That's an Aleister Crowley
okay.
affirmation. The
Okay.
Satanic Church comes from LaVey. That's
Yeah,
a
I
whole
know.
different. He's more of a Nietzschean. But that aside, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
What does matter is how can you? Here's my question: how could you truly be submitted like she's willing to be to your husband if you're willing to go to your husband and ask if you can sleep with another man? How's that actual submission?
Well, that's the thing. I'm not married. I'm never planning on being married.
that doesn't answer to the
no,
question.
and that's the thing. If I were to be married and we chose to be completely monogamous for the rest of our lives, and that was both of our choices, that's what I would go with because that's what we have decided on. However, in this particular
Yeah, but
relationship,
please
that was
answer
not our
to the
decision.
question. To the question. To the question.
Which is what?
Listen
I
to
don't
the
have a
question
husband.
Itself. Hang on. The question itself. If submission means I'm giving myself over to you for all choice, then how could you truly be submitted to a man who you would then be willing to go to and ask that you be shared?
Hold
How?
on. So you get a response, you make one response, Andrew, you give a response, and then I have to move it on.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, so I never asked to be shared, and it is not about submission. I can submit if it is the right situation. And once again, your question is not even applicable. I'm sorry. Because
Okay.
because I'm
I
not
just
planning
want-
on
I just wanna respond
100%
with this,
submitting.
right?
I'm
So here's-
I'm not
so here's
submitting
what I'm-
100%.
Okay, so let me just ask this last question. Okay, how would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast this morning?
I didn't eat breakfast this morning.
Okay, that's what I thought.